I'm Smitty, I'm an alcoholic. I've been through this process with the patience of 2 Big Book Step Study sponsors and the help of a loving God. I got to Big Book Step Study, so I drank, right? I think that's pretty much why, right? So I drank until I blacked out. I drank until I wet my bed. I drank until I wet your bed with you in it and told you your waterbed sprung a leak and then snuck out of your house. I drank until I woke up and didn't know where the bruises on my body or the dents in my car came from. I drank until I woke up and didn't know where I was and how long I had been there. And I realized I couldn't drink anymore after almost choking to death on my own vomit. So I started going to AA meetings, and they told me to stop doing drugs. So I left AA meetings and didn't drink anymore and did drugs. I just did drugs. And I did drugs for like another 6 years. And I thought I had solved my own problem until I couldn't decide. I couldn't stop doing cocaine. I couldn't leave my house. And I couldn't decide which room of my apartment was the best one to commit suicide in. So I checked into a detox. And then I went to open meetings for a long time, right? And everybody laughed at my jokes, and I had a lot of days in a row abstinent from a line, a pill, a drink, or a joint, right? So I thought I had figured this thing out. And I had done other things. The beginning of the book talks about the kind of gentler way, the kind of softer way. So I had done other things that other people would refer to as step work. So I thought I was in recovery, and I thought I had done what I needed to do. And then at a point in time when I had many, many days in a row abstinent from drugs or alcohol, my whole fucking life fell apart, right? My whole life fell apart. My job sucked. My first wife, please note that adjective, my first wife started to disappear for like days at a time, which I thought, okay, well that's good. We'd always had kind of an agreement after I got out of detox that she was going to continue to do what she did and I was going to be in recovery. And as long as she didn't bring certain things home or do certain things around me, we would just respect each other's kind of space. But the disappearing for like long periods of time started to kind of freak me out. Then she started to come home high. Then she started then she started to come home with her friends to get high. And then one night while I was sleeping, after having not seen her for a couple of days, I woke up to the sound of her and a couple of guys from the bar where she played darts and hung around, like getting high. And I woke up and thought originally that, I'm like, that poor girl. I didn't use that kind of language, but I woke up and said, oh, that poor girl, she's so high, because I was convinced that she was cheating on me. I said, oh, that poor girl, she's so high, she's actually brought her boyfriend back here to fool around with him, with me asleep in the other room. Wow. Well, this marriage is over. I'm really glad I'm not a gun owner. And I walked out there, and basically there was nothing romantic going on. She just had these 2 dudes with her that she knew, and they were about to do like what looked like an 8-ball of coke. And I said, look, you guys really have to get out of here. I'll make you a deal, okay? Take her, take the drugs, and leave. And I'll never bring my friends to your house at 2 a.m, brew a pot of coffee, and start doing a meeting in your living room. Do we have a deal? And they looked at me for a second and said something, and I reminded them that they really needed to leave now. And I was, I weigh, over 250, I believe. And I was in my underwear. So when they saw that, yes, I have a sense of humor, but I really was kind of serious, they left. And after that happened, I started to share with a friend of mine what was going on. And up until that point, I hadn't told anybody about this. And this friend of mine, who I knew from open meetings, said to me, I go to a kind of meeting that you've never been to before. You probably like it, and it'll probably help you through whatever's going on right now, and indefinitely. But the biggest reason, Smitty, that I think you'll benefit from this meeting, and you should check it out, is because until you've finished doing the steps in the format specific to the meeting, you can't speak at the meeting. And you could probably use a break from your favorite thing, the sound of your own voice. And at first, and yes, this person happened to be female, And yes, I happened to be interested in getting to know her a lot better. So I went anywhere she told me to go and did anything she told me to do. But she did take me to Big Book Step Study meetings. And I heard a guy at a Big Book Step Study meeting share about his job breaking down sober, and losing a marriage sober, and having all kinds of other things happen to him sober, and how this process saw him through that. And I asked him to help me, and he said he would. And he went on to talk to me for a while. He had me read, and then there came a night when he took me upstairs after a meeting. He knelt next to me, and he said, "Take my hand." And I took his hand, and he prayed with me, which is something I had never done in recovery. I never had anybody actually ask me to pray with them. And then he said, get a book, start writing. And I did that, and then he moved to Florida. So I went to a couple more meetings, and I talked to him, and I said, look, this isn't going to work. You're living in Florida, and I understand that you're planning on commuting back here like once a month, but you have children here. I don't want to interfere with that. I'm too insecure and too selfish to really manage that effectively. So I'm going to find somebody else. And he said, no problem. He gave me like 3 phone numbers of people to call. I went to a couple of meetings and heard another guy share basically the same kind of scenario, right? That he was a long ways away from, a substance. And that he was, and this particular person actually went to prison and did this work before he left to do time. And that's what got him through going to prison. And he got out, and his life was unbelievably different today than it had ever been. And I asked him to help me. And I just, I talked to him really quick and said, my name is Smitty, my whole life's falling apart. Here's 1,000 things about me that you really don't even give a shit about. But I'm going to blurt them all out very quickly because I fear your opinion. And he said, I said, can you help me? And he said, I don't know. You strike me as a pretty sick fucking guy. But I will try. And then he immediately said, have you taken step 3 yet? And I said, well, yes, I took it with this guy, but he's moving and I need a new sponsor. He said, all right, well, come with me. And he took me into a side room at a church, and he knelt next to me, and we started to say the 3rd step prayer, and then he stopped me and he said, Smitty, take my hand. And I took his hand, and he said, there are 2 things that are going to happen now. If you do this, you have to promise me that if you start this work with me, that you will finish it, because I will be available to you to finish it. And I said, deal. And he said, and after you finish it, you have to take at least one other person through. That's what I'm going to ask, and those are musts. And I said, you got it. And so we said the prayer together, and it felt calming. And I finally felt as if I was going to like something was going to change finally, from the monotony that my life had become, from the kind of complacency that I had found myself in. And because to get into the personal kind of jackpot that I was in, sober, with as much recovery as I thought I had worked, was baffling to me. And I was really concerned that I was going to hurt someone else very egregiously or hurt myself. And so I really kind of felt relieved to be there with him. And then we took a look at this reading together. And he went right to, he asked us if I had any question about the 3 pertinent ideas, if I had any problem with them, that I was an alcoholic and could not manage my own life. And, clearly I could not. That probably no human power could have relieved my alcoholism. And at that point, having done everything I could do, and having done everything that my friends and sponsor in open meetings had told me to do, to see myself through what was going on in my life at the time, had failed miserably. I believed him. I believed him that there was nothing on this earth that was going to help me at that moment. And then he said that God could and would if he was sought. And and that's because when we're beaten, we'll become willing, right? When I couldn't drink anymore, because every time I drank, I blacked out, wet the bed, and fought with somebody, right? I became willing to stop drinking. When I couldn't do coke anymore, because every time I did coke, I got really geeked up and got suicidal, okay, and got to a point where like I couldn't stop using, and I couldn't leave my house in the daylight because I thought the Secret Service was following me. I realized I couldn't do drugs anymore. And here I was, and now my life was in a complete shambles around me without any chemicals in my system, okay? So now I was beaten, and now I was really willing to turn it over, was kind of the point that I tried to make to him, and then he believed me. And then it says that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And I was living proof of that. We talked about the actor, and later on, many of my resentments were not about people that did anything to me, but didn't do what I wanted them to do, right? Because I was the actor. And we went on to talk about the meaning of self-centeredness and what it really was, and how I was trying to run my own life, and that if I was sitting there talking to him in the side room of a church in Linfield on a Sunday night, with a girl that I was about to start having an extramarital affair with, while I was separated from a girl that I was still married to, and on the verge of, and living at my father's at, 43 years. I was a 43-year-old guy with an 11 o'clock curfew. Because my father was very clear when I moved in. He said, you can stay here, there's plenty of room here. It's a 2-bedroom place, now, your mother's been dead for a couple of years. So I'm happy to have you stay here, kid, but I'm too fucking old. You can't be walking in and out of here at like 3 in the morning. So if you're not going to be here by 11, call me and go sleep in your car. I don't care. He said, so do you really understand that look where your best thinking has got you. Look at where your life is right now. So are you really willing to do this? And I told him that I was. And next he told me then he looked at the notebook that I had started with my first Big Book Step City sponsor. He ripped the pages out of it because he was very unhappy with the format and what was written there, and threw them away. I think that was to ensure that his name became the first entry in the new notebook. And then we launched on my writing. Right, we launched on my writing. And whereas we're on step 3, that's my experience with step 3. And today, my experience with step 3 has grown. This prayer is still one of the prayers that, I don't meditate when I get up in the morning. I have very important cigarettes to smoke and a lot of coffee to drink. However, I will eventually leave my house, right? Because I'm in recovery today and I can do that. But I will eventually leave my house, and most days it's to go to work. And what'll happen is I'll travel to work, but before I, walk into the building in which I work or get out of my car if I'm driving there, I will sit in my car quietly for a few minutes. And the 3rd step prayer is one of the prayers that I will recite every morning. And every morning when I when I recite the phrase, relieve me of the bondage of self, I don't think about the things that I thought about when I said it with him that day in that church in Linfield. But what I think about are things that have happened to me in the last 24 hours that are still evidence in my life of that bondage and the way that could still manifest itself. So that's my experience with step 3. If you're new here and just checking this out, right, I can assure you that this is not going to hurt you. And the other thing that my experience has shown is that once I did this, I came to understand that I was sicker than I ever really truly understood that I was after I quit using and stayed that way for a long time. So if you're thinking about doing this, go ahead and start now. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you for inviting me to share. I'm Smitty and I'm an alcoholic.